Hi, it's Human Ellery here, and in my last video I created some new bonsai soil, and as part of that I outlined the fact that I'd be having a look at the Surinam Cherry air layering that I did in one of my previous videos, and seeing how that was going and potentially repotting the top part of that into a new pot with my new bonsai soil. Now, I have just had a look at the air laying there and it hasn't worked. The roots didn't actually come out of the part where I ring barked the tree. It must have been just too young, and it's just recovered and yeah, growing leaves from the top. So where I thought it was growing leaves from the top because it was rooting in the soil, it's just because it healed over. So anyway, that didn't work. I'll show you the extract at the end of this video in terms of the failure there. But because I cannot use the new soil for the new for the Surinam Cherry and can't use the pot for that purpose either, what I'm actually going to do is create the start of a new little forest with my Ficus Hillii emeralds. So I got both of these trees. It would have been it was in April, so it's 5 months ago now. So yeah, it's been over the course of the winter and they've grown heaps since I first got them. They're quite thick in the base now, and initially they were like incredibly thin, so you can see quite a bit of density there. Initially they were probably about the size of that branch about 4 months ago, so very thin. So what I'm going to do, because they're typically just your backyard plants, they're typically very straight in the trunk, not a lot of not great as a bonsai individually, but I've done a fair bit of pruning to try and get a bit of a branch structure on these trees, even though they are young, just to try and get the branch divided, not single trunk, get a bit of character in them. I do plan on doing a lot of scarring to the trunk down the track, potentially even splitting a couple of them just to start making it look interesting. But my idea is to start a bit of a forest with these trees. So contrary to your typical forest where you get a whole bunch of different trees, just compile them together, what I'm theorizing is just starting a forest with a couple of the larger trees in the center. Then I've got some cuttings which I took from both of these trees, and I've just been getting them to start to root in a bit of water in my windowsill in my kitchen. So what I'm going to do is put those cuttings further to the exterior of the plant, put them in a deep pot for now to really get them a bit of vigor over the next year or two, and then gradually with time I'm going to take more cuttings from these trees and start to spring new smaller trees around the outside of the forest, gradually get it into a wider and more shallow pot to have a typical forest structure. But very early days, I'm going to see a lot of growth in these trees, so yeah, I'll just start that and see how it goes. So I'm going to pull them out of these pots. So when I did get them, they were in just your small little tube pots, so they've actually grown a lot of roots in the last 5 months. Probably repotting them a little bit sooner than entirely necessary, but wow, and roots have grown all into into the mesh. Incredible how much roots have grown out of this. They were, in these little tube pots, they were quite root bound in those, and they've very quickly adapted to the larger pot and this bonsai soil. So this bonsai soil was my initial mix of bonsai soil, so quite heavy in terms of being quite good for your smaller trees, your cuttings or what have you, because it's very fine structure, but not as much aeration. But yeah, it was largely consistent of all substances which I got from Bunnings, but perlite, vermiculite, so perlite being a stone, although very light and hard to hold the plants down with. Vermiculite, also very light, but that's a kind of like a fired clay. And then the last element to this particular stuff was just the soil that initially came with the trees. So normally mixed a little bit of potting soil in as well, just to provide a bit of a bit of a better soil mix, something to retain the nutrients and moisture a bit as well. So the new soil which I'm putting in, is the particles are a lot larger, so we'll see how they go in the new soil, the new pot, and with a couple of their little cuttings that I took from them growing alongside. So I'm just gonna, even though I only potted them 5 months ago and they haven't like root bound or anything, I'm just gonna rake back, have a look at the roots that I do have, and do a little bit of root pruning, just so I really want to develop some good nabari on this as well. So just going to fill up some soil. Alright, so there's my soil mix. Looks like there's a bit of extra akadama in that part at the top there, but yeah, the bark particles, a bit of stone, and so now I'm going to cut off these long roots, they'll grow back. Nice and thick at the base here. There's a few roots which kind of stick out on their own and often not odd. So I'm just going to cut those top roots off. This part of the root system, they're all fanning out quite horizontally, which is exactly what I want. So there. This one seems quite similar. Nice. So I'm just going to position these quite far into the center of this pot, and just going to prune back some of the branches that are growing here too quite vigorously. Probably kind of prune back to just doing a bit of directional pruning with those leaves. Didn't want a branch to come straight up where I just cut that one off. Okay, so I've got these two positions kind of in the center of this pot. Soil looks really good actually. Keen to see how they take off, and just going to put these little rooting cuttings in here as well. Hopefully they take off with a fair bit of vigour. That one looks interesting. It's rooting off the little side branch there as well. So it'll be interesting to see how this one looks when it becomes a much larger plant. Not really positioning them in any set way at this point, just putting them in there and hoping they take off, really. Now, because of the air pockets in the side of this pot, I don't want to put them anywhere. Well, in normal circumstances I wouldn't want to put them too close to the side of the pot either, but particularly now I'm not going to butt them right up against the side of the pot, because yeah, I want there to be a little bit of room for those roots to fan out before they get stopped. So there we have the start of my new little forest. So a few little cuttings growing in there. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I will slowly start to take more cuttings with time. Fortunately, these ones here are a little bit, I've noticed so far that for it to work I really need to have a little bit more woody structure to the cuttings when I take them off for them to root properly. Other ones that I've put in when they've just been green like this have just started to rot in the water. So yeah, anyway, so there's my little Ficus Hillii emerald. Start of a forest. So look, I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please leave a like. Comment if there's anything you'd like me to discuss in my future videos. I will, after this, put in the the snippet from creating my Surinam Cherry air layering, which didn't work, but I'll let you watch that just to, yeah, I guess if it helps in any way for any air layerings that you might be trying to do in the future. So yeah, like it, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, and all the best. Thanks. And this is part 2 of my air layering video where I've air layered my Surinam Cherry. So in this video I'm going to show you what I do with removing the air layer, checking its progress to see if those roots are fully established, and then potting my new tree. So in my last video I basically had this Surinam Cherry that I had as a very tall seedling tree, which was probably grown for probably some kind of fruit farm or something of the sort anyway. But it was really long. It had some leaves which were back here, so I cut it hard back to here, and since then I had a couple of tiny little buds pop out from the bottom. So my thought process was, well look, I don't really want a huge tree, so I'll reduce it back, but I may as well get 2 birds with 1 stone, try and air layer it, see how it goes. And so that was 2 months ago. It's now the 4th day of spring, and I've had in the last 2 months a lot of growth, some growth from below the air layering, but a lot of growth has come through from the top. When I initially did this air layering, there was hardly any leaves here at all. So anyway, that's the progress. We'll have a look today and see how it's established. So first, what I'm going to do is just take off this. So it was it was kind of just an experiment initially, just to see if this would work, whether or not it would spring out any roots. It's actually, soil here is actually quite dry. So what's actually happened here? So I ring barked the tree around where I wanted the air layering to be established, but I mustn't have ring barked it well enough, because there are no roots which have sprouted out at all from the bottom of this tree. So I mustn't have had the soil moist enough, because of the material that I used. I guess I should have used plastic like they normally use and wrapped it around so it retained all the moisture that was in there. As it was hard for me to spray it and try and get moisture into that soil. So that soil just turned really dry. And the air layering hasn't worked. Yeah, so that's a shame. So what I'm going to have to do is try and figure out where I go to from here, because it's nice having the tree that's I kind of got this to begin with as a fruit tree because I wanted it to to grow as a larger bonsai. A larger bonsai, because it's a nice tree. They are really nice as a bonsai tree, especially when the fruit look quite nice on them, but also because it's a fruit tree, so may as well grow it a bit larger and get some fruit from it. But the air layering hasn't worked, and I really don't want it to be so tall so soon. I really want a good bit of tapering in the branch structure. So what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to cut off the top. I might try and grow it from a cutting. So I have had a lot of success with growing things from cuttings. So frequently what I've been doing, and this has been through winter even, I've just been taking a cutting. Now this is a Chinese elm. So these propagate really easily, but I've had the same success with a lot of bougainvilleas that I've been growing from cuttings, a lot of ficuses. But rather than just putting the stick into the ground, I've been putting it in water, waiting for it to start putting out its little roots, and then I've been putting them in soil and seeing how they establish from there. So I'm going to cut this one back because I really don't need it to be so tall, and I'm going to try and grow it from a cutting. So I don't want all of the leaves that I do have here, because when you do try and grow a tree from a cutting, when you've got all of these leaves, it really detracts. Well, basically the tree tries to pull energy from the roots up to sustain the energy in the leaves, but because it's a cutting and you don't have an established root system, it takes a lot of energy. Now if you don't have if you've got too many leaves, then it tries to pull up a lot of energy for those from the roots, which it doesn't have, to the leaves, and that will put a massive drain on the tree, which will quite potentially kill it. So you want to try and leave potentially not even any leaves, but I try and leave perhaps 1 or 2 leaves on the top, just so you've got something for it to photosynthesize with. But I remove most of the leaves, and that just gives it a little bit of a better fighting chance, and see how we go from there. So going to remove most of the leaves. Now I do want a bit of, hopefully keep some of the branching structure that's coming out here, so might just leave some of them. I'll leave leaves on, some of the higher up ones, but these lower ones, I think I'm just gonna, this lower one in particular, I think I'm just gonna cut it back and see if it just shoots off after those leaves there, see if it buds back. But I'm going to cut it back fairly significantly. It might bud back from part of this, but it'll probably die off. And put it in a bit of water and see how it goes. So yeah, that was a very unsuccessful air layering, but I guess that's just the process. Live and you learn. So cut it back to just a few leaves. Got a glass of water, then I'm just going to put it in and put it where it doesn't get full sun, but a bit of sun. And yeah, hopefully in about a month's time there might be some leaves sprouting out from this. I mean some roots sprouting out from this, and then I can plant it. But yeah, anyway, so that's my Surinam cherry that I unsuccessfully air layered. So we'll see how we go next time I attempt an air layering. But yeah, as I did mention in my first video, it was just a mock attempt, just to test really to see what would happen. I wasn't really 100% sure that it would work, because frequently with air layering you do it on much larger branches, so typically, you know, around the size of your thumb. I suppose it varies, around the size of my finger maybe. So yeah, it didn't work, but I'll keep working and hopefully this spring this will work.